The water around Andros Island shimmered like liquid glass, concealing a darkness that reached beyond imagination. Beneath its perfect surface lay the blue holes, vertical tunnels carved through stone, as deep and silent as space itself. On a warm morning in December 1971, 3 divers prepared to challenge that abyss. Archie Forfer, Ann Gunderson, and Jim Lockwood believed they could conquer the impossible. But how far could the human body truly go before the ocean claimed it? As they vanished into the mouth of the blue hole, the light above began to fade. Minutes later, their air filled with silence, and the greatest deep dive of its time became a descent from which 2 would never return. To the eye, the blue holes of the Bahamas seem impossibly calm. The water is so clear that the line between air and sea disappears, giving the illusion of floating in the sky. But beneath that stillness lies a labyrinth of vertical shafts and twisting caverns that drop hundreds of feet into darkness. Few places on Earth inspire such fascination or fear. To divers, these holes are the ultimate challenge, a mix of beauty and danger that tempts them to keep going deeper than they should. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, exploration fever swept through the diving world. Depth records became the new frontier. Breathing ordinary compressed air, pioneers sought to prove that the limits of human endurance could be pushed further. Among them was Archie Forfer, a bold and confident diver with a passion for extremes. Alongside him was Ann Gunderson, equally experienced and fearless, and Jim Lockwood, the man who had planned the technical logistics of the attempt. Together, they set their sights on one of Andros Island's deepest blue holes, a vertical tunnel that seemed to plunge straight into the Earth's core. Local guides warned of unpredictable currents and pressure effects that could distort a diver's senses, but records had a way of silencing caution. The goal was to descend past 400 feet on standard air, a depth far beyond the comfort zone of most divers. Few fully understood what that meant: the creeping fog of nitrogen narcosis, the risk of oxygen toxicity, the disorienting blackness that turns seconds into eternity. The team believed they were ready. The blue hole waited, patient and silent, as if it already knew the cost of what they would attempt. On the morning of December 11th, the sky over Andros Island was clear, the water flat and inviting. Archie Forfer, Ann Gunderson, and Jim Lockwood prepared their gear in silence. Each movement was deliberate. Each sound, from the hiss of the tanks to the click of a buckle, echoed across the still lagoon. The plan was ambitious but precise. Descend to 480 feet on compressed air, set a new depth record, and ascend slowly under supervision from surface and safety divers. The operation had been rehearsed again and again, yet the ocean has a way of erasing plans the moment a diver sinks beneath the surface. At 10:45 that morning, the trio dropped into the blue. The light dimmed almost immediately. At 50 feet, the surface was already a faint shimmer above them. By 200 feet, that shimmer was gone. The water was cold and heavy. Every breath felt thicker, slower, and the first hints of narcosis began to dull thought and reaction. Safety diver Sheck Exley hovered near his plan limit, watching their descent lights vanish into the abyss. He had seen this before, the slow, hypnotic pull that drives divers deeper than intended. Minutes stretched into shadows. Then something went wrong. Later accounts suggest that, at extreme depth, the team lost control of buoyancy. Their descent quickened. The pressure climbed with crushing speed. Archie Forfer was leading. Ann Gunderson followed close behind. Lockwood tried to stabilize his position, but the narcotic haze made every motion delayed. The line tension went slack. Above, Exley felt the tug vanish. He descended beyond his safety depth, trying to glimpse their lights. The cold pressed against his chest like iron. He knew that one more minute might mean his own death. Still, he pushed downward. He saw nothing. No bubbles, no glimmer, only a darkness so complete it seemed alive. At the surface, the world above the blue hole was calm, unaware of what was unfolding far below. The support divers waited for the planned signal that never came. Minutes passed, then too many. The stillness that once felt peaceful began to feel wrong. Deep below, the 3 divers were losing their fight against the elements. At that depth, compressed air becomes an invisible poison. Nitrogen saturates the blood, twisting thoughts into slow confusion. Oxygen grows toxic. Simple decisions blur into mistakes. The difference between up and down fades. repeats until both feel the same. Archie Forfa, descending faster than he realized, drifted beyond 400 feet and past 450. The darkness thickened, his body slowed. Anne Gunderson followed, her gauges spinning faster than her mind could process. Lockwood tried to adjust his buoyancy, but the narcotic haze turned his movements clumsy. The deeper they went, the less control they had. Sheck Exley, still watching from above, felt the pull on the safety line vanish. Training and instinct collided. He dropped below his limit, descending through the narrowing shaft, the light from above fading with every foot. At 300 feet, he began to feel it too. The dizziness, the slow pulse of confusion pressing against his skull. He fought to stay focused, scanning the void for any sign of the others. Nothing, just the soft pulse of his own bubbles vanishing into the black. Back at the surface, the support team prepared for an emergency recovery. The sun was hot overhead, but the men's faces had turned pale. Minutes had become an eternity. Then suddenly, movement appeared in the water column. A single diver rising fast. It was Lockwood. He had lost consciousness at depth, his safety weight belt released by chance or instinct. The sudden loss of weight sent him upward through the dark column until he drifted into the arms of rescuers near the surface. They pulled him aboard, breathing but barely conscious. When he awoke, Forfa and Gunderson were gone. Exley surfaced shortly after, gasping and shaking. He had gone further than any safety diver should. His eyes told the rest. There was nothing left to find. The blue hole had taken them. When the last diver reached the surface, silence settled over the lagoon. The team stared into the water, waiting for bubbles that never rose. The blue hole, calm and glassy, gave nothing back. Within minutes, it felt less like an ocean and more like a grave. Rescue attempts began at once. Sheck Exley returned to the depths, pushing beyond exhaustion, hoping for a sign of life, but the darkness offered no answers. At 200 feet, his light vanished into black walls that seemed to close around him. When he surfaced again, he shook his head. The ocean had taken Archie Forfa and Anne Gunderson. Days of searching followed, but the bodies were never found. Word spread quickly through the diving community. A quiet warning carried from one coast to another. Experts studied the data, debating causes, narcosis, oxygen toxicity, or simple loss of control. Yet every explanation led to the same truth. They had gone too deep on air, chasing numbers that the body could not endure. For those who survived, the lesson was unforgettable. Depth had shown its price, and courage had met its limit. From that moment, Andros Island's beauty carried a shadow, one that still drifts beneath its crystal surface. The blue holes of Andros still shine with unreal beauty, their surfaces calm, their depths silent. To most visitors, they are wonders of nature. To divers, they are sacred ground. Beneath that still water, Archie Forfa and Anne Gunderson remain, forever part of the world they tried to conquer. Their deaths in 1971 changed diving forever. The tragedy forced new respect for depth, new safety rules, and an end to the belief that courage alone could defy the sea. From that point, every deep diver carried their story like a warning written in water. At sunset, the blue holes turned dark again, reflecting nothing but the fading light. Those who stand on the shore say the air feels different there, as if it remembers. Some silences never fade. The morning light over Roatan shimmered against the calm Caribbean water. Divers from Anthony's Key Resort prepared for what should have been a routine descent along the coral wall. The ocean was still, the current gentle, visibility perfect. Among them was a woman who had spent her life beneath the waves, confident and composed. She adjusted her mask, checked her pressure gauge, and disappeared beneath the surface. Moments later, she was gone. At 70 feet, her dive partner turned, expecting to see the familiar glint of her fins. There was nothing. How could a diver simply vanish in clear water, with no sound, no struggle, and no trace? The sea gave no answer. It only closed in silence. Anthony's Key Resort sits quietly along the northern edge of Roatan, a paradise known for turquoise water and coral gardens that stretch for miles. It is one of the oldest and most trusted dive resorts in the Caribbean, a place where professionals and beginners alike gather to explore the famous Mesoamerican reef. The resort's walls are lined with dive maps, photographs, and stories of encounters with dolphins, rays, and reef sharks. For most visitors, it is a world of beauty, safety, and routine. On that morning in January 2017, the group of divers boarded a small boat at sunrise. The sky was clear and the sea glowed with shifting shades of blue and green. The dive plan was simple: descend along the reef wall, to around 80 feet, explore the coral, and ascend together. The missing diver, described by witnesses as calm and experienced, followed the guide's lead without hesitation. The descent began smoothly. Sunlight filtered down through columns of clear water, lighting the reef below like stained glass. Fish moved in slow, fluid patterns. Everything appeared perfect. Then, somewhere around 25 meters, the diver drifted behind the group and disappeared from view. The dive master turned immediately, scanning the water, but the spot where she had been was empty. The team searched in widening circles, signaling, checking air, looking for bubbles. There were none. What had begun as an ordinary dive now carried a creeping weight of disbelief. At the surface, the sea looked as it always did, calm, bright, and endless, but something had changed forever beneath it. The first minutes after a diver disappears are a race against time. Below the surface, every second matters. When the guide lost sight of her, he began a controlled ascent, scanning the reef and open water for bubbles or movement. The group followed protocol, maintaining depth while he searched the surrounding area. Nothing, only the faint hiss of their regulators and the hum of the current filled the silence. The dive master signaled an emergency and the group surfaced together. Within minutes, alarms echoed across Anthony's Key. Staff scrambled to prepare additional tanks and coordinate a rapid response. Boats launched in every direction as fellow divers volunteered to help. The search spread quickly, covering the reef wall and sandy bottom where she had last been seen. The water remained eerily clear, making her absence even more surreal. The first hour brought hope. Experienced divers retraced her last known position, believing she might have drifted deeper or been caught in an unseen current. But Roatan's waters are unpredictable. Powerful downdrafts can form near reef edges, pulling divers into vertical drops that descend hundreds of feet. Beneath the coral shelf, tunnels open into blue corridors with no light and no exit. By afternoon, helicopters from the Honduran Navy joined the search. The resort staff coordinated from shore, radioing updates and mapping grid zones. Divers worked in rotation, some refusing to stop even as the sun began to set. The search continued into the night. When the final team surfaced, exhausted and silent, the truth began to sink in. She was gone. No bubbles, no debris, no sign of equipment. Just a name added to the list of mysteries the Caribbean refuses to explain. In the days that followed, locals began to speak of the spot differently. They called it the place where the sea had taken someone without a sound. The official investigation began within hours of the disappearance. Local police, the Honduran Coast Guard, and resort officials gathered on the dock at Anthony's Key. Divers and instructors gave statements describing the dive plan, visibility, and exact time the woman vanished. According to the report, the dive had been routine until that moment, at 25 meters, when the guide turned and saw only open water. There were no currents strong enough to explain it, no signs of distress, and no trace of equipment left behind. Search and rescue operations continued for 3 days. Boats combed the surrounding reefs, while divers swept the depths below the drop-off. The water remained calm and clear, conditions that should have made recovery easy, yet nothing was found. Without a body, the investigation became a mystery rather than a conclusion. Theories spread quickly among divers. Some believed she had followed a passing turtle or fish and drifted into a deeper section of the wall where narcosis and nitrogen took over. Others thought a sudden current had pulled her down into the maze of caves that runs beneath Roatan. A few whispered of a blackout, a regulator failure, or simple disorientation in the vast blue. None of it could be proven. Resort officials released a statement expressing sympathy to the family and reaffirming their safety protocols. The diving community responded with silence. Those who knew the site understood how deceptive the reef could be. Beautiful from above, merciless below. By the end of the week, the search was suspended. The sea remained untouched, indifferent to the questions left behind. In a place designed for wonder, the ocean had delivered only loss and uncertainty. In the days that followed, the resort fell into quiet. Guests continued their dives, but an unease lingered in the air. The missing diver's gear remained in her room, neatly arranged, waiting for an owner who would never return. Staff moved carefully, speaking in low voices, aware that one of their own had vanished beneath the same waters they celebrated every day. Anthony's Key Resort released a brief statement offering condolences and reaffirming their commitment to diver safety. Behind the formality was genuine grief. Many of the instructors had dived with her before. Some refused to return to that section of the reef for weeks. Others returned the next morning, believing the ocean demanded acknowledgement, not avoidance. In the diving community, the incident became a quiet warning. Articles circulated online, forums debated what had gone wrong, and veterans reminded newcomers that even in clear water, the sea holds its secrets. Every diver who read about the disappearance paused before their next descent, thinking of the moment when visibility ends and silence begins. For those at Anthony's Key, life returned to normal, but the reef was never the same. Beneath its color and calm, there remained the echo of a name spoken softly into the current, a reminder of how easily wonder can turn to loss. The waters around Roatan shine brighter than glass, calm and inviting, giving no sign of the lives they have taken. Tourists still come to Anthony's Key, their laughter carried on the same wind that once filled the search boats. The reef has moved on, but those who dive here remember. They slow their breathing when they reach the 25-meter mark and glance into the blue, where a single diver vanished without a trace. The ocean does not forget. It hides its answers in silence and depth, giving back only fragments, a story half told, a question that will never find an ending. Some say the sea is cruel, others say it is fair, but those who know it best understand its truth. It keeps what it takes. Each evening the water turns silver under the fading light, and the reef settles into stillness again. Somewhere below, the silence waits. The water at Little River Springs shimmered beneath the early Florida sun, clear as glass, calm as sleep. Beneath that peaceful surface ran one of the state's most intricate cave systems, a maze of limestone passages known only to those willing to enter the dark. For decades, divers had come here chasing depth, distance, and the strange silence that waits under pressure. On that quiet morning, George Banks prepared for his descent. He was known among friends as steady and methodical, someone who respected the limits of every dive. Yet even the most cautious diver feels the pull of the unknown. The current whispered through the spring, soft but insistent, as he secured his tanks and stepped into the water. What drives a person to enter a place from which so few return? Only the river below held the answer. Little River Springs lies in northern Florida, where clear water flows from a deep limestone vent that disappears into darkness. To visitors, it is a tranquil place of blue pools and moss-covered rocks. To divers, it is a living labyrinth, known for tight restrictions and sudden shifts in flow. Beneath the surface, tunnels stretch for thousands of feet, some barely wide enough to pass through. George Banks knew this system well. He had trained for dives in overhead environments and understood the discipline required to survive them. That morning, he entered the mainspring opening, following the sloping floor until it fell away into the cave mouth. A real line marked the route inward, glowing faintly under his light. Each turn of his fins stirred the silt below, and the world around him grew dimmer with every foot descended. At 40 feet, the sunlight vanished. The water cooled sharply. The cave ceiling arched overhead like the inside of a cathedral carved by pressure. He moved slowly, checking his instruments, listening to the rhythm of his breath. The sound echoed through his mask, steady, mechanical, alive. Divers who came after him said the current that day was unusually strong, pulling toward the deeper chamber. Whether George intended to explore beyond that point is unknown. What is certain is that he continued forward into the passage where light bends and distance loses meaning. The deeper George Banks swam, the more the water seemed to close around him. The narrow tunnels of Little River Springs pressed inward, walls of pale limestone worn smooth by centuries of current. He followed the main line, his torchlight cutting through the haze of suspended silt. Every few seconds, he paused to check his air supply. Methodical as always, there was no sign of panic, only precision. At 70 feet, the tunnel forked. The left passage led to a familiar route mapped by divers before him. The right, slightly wider, curved downward into shadow. No one can say which direction he chose, but somewhere beyond that fork, the flow began to change. Water pushed harder against him, dragging at his fins. His bubbles spiraled sideways, a sure sign that the current had shifted. He reached out to stabilize himself and brushed the cave wall. A thin cloud of sediment lifted, spreading like smoke in the beam of his torch. Visibility dropped instantly. The line that had been his guide vanished in the brown fog. In a single moment, the cave became infinite. Divers who later explored the site spoke of that same phenomenon, how one careless motion can erase the world. When the water clouds, direction means nothing. Up and down dissolve. The body turns by instinct, chasing the illusion of light that isn't there. No one witnessed George's final minutes. Whether he tried to ascend or follow the wall back remains unknown. But deep in that system, there are places where the flow is so strong that retreat becomes nearly impossible. When his light finally faded, it did not flicker or flare. It simply disappeared into the moving dark, one more glimmer absorbed by the endless current beneath the Florida stone. When George Banks failed to resurface, the calm at Little River Springs shifted instantly. The surface looked unchanged, the same glassy blue, the same slow current winding toward the Suwannee River, but beneath it, something had gone terribly still. Fellow divers notified the park rangers, who in turn called the county rescue team. Within the hour, lights, lines, and oxygen tanks surrounded the bank. The water, once recreational, had become a site of rescue. Divers from nearby springs arrived to help. Men and women trained in recovery operations. They knew Little River's reputation well. The spring is famous among cave divers for its beauty, but also its cruelty. Its narrow passages, strong flow, and low visibility have claimed several lives before. Every rescuer who entered that day understood what they were walking into and what they might not walk out of. The first descent was cautious. They followed the guideline deep into the main passage, then branched off toward the chamber where George was last seen. The current tugged at their equipment, whispering through the rock like a steady breath. Visibility was nearly gone. Their torches illuminated nothing but swirling brown clouds. They swept the walls slowly, searching by feel. Fins touched the silt, and the floor lifted again, turning water to smoke. Inside that confusion, one diver brushed against something smooth, the real line, still anchored but buried beneath layers of sediment. Following it led them into the deep section where the current hit hardest. At last, a faint metallic reflection broke through the dark. It was a cylinder, wedged against the wall. A few feet beyond, they found him. George Banks lay motionless, his line still clipped to the reel, as though he had tried to find his way back before the air ran out. His gauge read empty. The rescuers worked in silence, securing the body carefully, moving with the reverence of people who know this place too well. When they surfaced, the air was heavy, the sound of rushing water filling the silence where words should have been. The surface of Little River Springs looked peaceful again by morning. Mist drifted above the water, catching the first light of day, but those who had been there through the night carried something the dawn could not wash away. For them, the river no longer shimmered with beauty. It carried the memory of a diver who never came back. The recovery team gathered quietly at the bank, packing their gear in silence. They had done this before, too many times in too many places, yet each time felt heavier than the last. No one spoke George Banks' name for a while. They did not need to. The sound of water moving over limestone said everything. Officials documented the recovery, taking photographs, logging coordinates, and noting the equipment found. His tanks were intact, his regulator functioning, his reel line secured. There were no signs of panic, only the calm precision of a diver who knew exactly where he was. That made it harder to understand and impossible to forget. Local divers later placed flowers at the edge of the spring. A simple note written on a waterproof slate read, "The current remembers." They left it weighted on the limestone shelf, where it stayed until the flow carried it away. Above, the sun rose slowly through the trees. The spring sparkled again, indifferent and eternal. Today, Little River Springs flows as it always has, clear, cold, and endlessly patient. Families swim in the shallows, their laughter echoing across the limestone walls. Few of them know what lies below, where the tunnels stretch like veins through the earth. Some say the water remembers. They claim that on quiet mornings, When the current slows, a faint glimmer can be seen far beneath the surface, a reflection that moves against the flow, vanishing as quickly as it appears. George Banks's name is known now among divers, a reminder whispered in classrooms and on dive boats. His story is told not as warning, but as reverence for the line between courage and surrender. The river does not judge, it simply waits, keeping its secrets in the dark.